following the event. To participate, if you're not familiar with Teams, most of you have already found the chat button. So feel free to add questions to the chat as we go through this. We'll also have a chance for Q&A at the end, where you'll have a chance to raise your hand and ask your question vocally. As you do ask your question, please do introduce yourself and your affiliation before adding your input. Okay. So, and I think we need to get started. Excellent. So welcome everybody to what is our 4th annual Education Development Career Panels. I'm excited to have you all join us today. My name is Will Smith. I am the Program Director for the Masters in Comparative Education and International Development here at the University of Edinburgh. And I'm excited today to have 4 panelists join us to share about their experiences and share some tips for students and others interested in getting into the education and development field. So the aim of the panel today is to expose students and others interested to really a wide variety of work in education and development that is being done by those that are currently positioned in typically international or regional organizations. So oftentimes individuals trying to get into this field don't have a full sense of what the opportunities are, so it's important for them to see kind of the breadth of opportunities that are potentially there for them. The idea is to provide a space for panelists to share their career journey, advice and challenges. I think we'll see that career journeys differ quite a bit across our panelists. So it's a great learning opportunity. And for students and other interested to ask questions related to current occupation, career path, and those working in the field. The structure today, each panelist is going to have about 7 minutes to share. We've asked them to share a little bit about their current position or career highlights, kind of career journey, the highlights addition to that. And then we'll have plenty of time today's panel for open question and answer. And as I mentioned, feel free to ask questions as we go along in the chat box. Just add your name, affiliation. If it's to a particular person, please do let, or a particular panelist, please do add that as well. And here we go. Let's jump in. So today we have 4 excellent panelists coming from all over the world. I want to start by introducing our moderator, who's going to take us through the panel and the question and answer. So welcome to Emily Goldstein, who's one of our current students in our Masters in Comparative Education and International Development program, and who's helping us put this panel together, as well as the rest of our event planning team. So Emily, I'm going to hand it over to you to lead us through the panel. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Will, for the introduction. As Will said, again, I'm a master's student in the CEID program here at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm really excited to learn from all of our wonderful panelists here today and their experience and expertise. So let me briefly introduce. Joining us today, we have Antonia Wulff, the Director of Research Policy and Advocacy at Education International. Also, Motoi Koike, Japan International Cooperation Agency expert and program coordinator at the Vietnam-Japan University. We also have Alexandra Biris, policy officer at the European Commission. And last but not least, Fatine Guedera, an economist and young professional at the World Bank. So I will turn it over to Antonia first, if you could please share more about your experience and advice for entering the field.
Yes, thank you so much, and a happy hello to you all from Brussels, where Education International is based. So maybe a couple of words about Education International to start with. EI, as the acronym is the Global Federation of Teacher Unions, and the teacher representative at the global level. We represent about 32 million teachers in about 400 unions in around 180 countries in the world. This means that we represent teachers starting with early childhood education and all the way through the education system to further and higher education and research as well. We also represent a number of so-called education support personnel, so the colleagues working in schools and education institutions who are not qualified teachers themselves, but may work as school secretaries, bus drivers, in the food services, as janitors. Depending on country context, our members will organize a number of these job categories. This means that, as I said, EI is the voice of teachers globally, and much of what we do is to ensure that there is a teacher voice in every policy process about education at the global level. So the thinking is that it's impossible for national teacher unions to be able to closely follow processes running within the UN system, for instance, and that's where Education International comes in. Our work is organized according to 4 kind of major strategic directions. A first one around robust, publicly funded quality education systems. A second one around an enhanced status of the teaching profession. A third one around rights, human and trade union rights of all education workers. And then a fourth one around strengthening unions, which includes quite a lot of global solidarity work as well. My role here in the Secretariat is Director of Research, Policy and Advocacy. That means that I oversee a team of 9 colleagues, and the work that EI does, engaging with global institutions, global actors, and global policy processes. It's a lovely mix of everything from commissioning research to strategically working out how to best influence a policy process, which organizations, which people to work with to reach our objectives, and a lot of negotiations with representatives of global organizations. We have, over the past year and a half, spent a lot of our time working on a UN initiative. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, launched a high-level panel on the teaching profession in the autumn of 2022 as one of the few tangible outcomes, actually, of the Transforming Education Summit that was held in New York and was the first ever summit on education at the level of heads of state. So in the closing, this high-level panel on the teaching profession was announced, and which in itself was a massive victory for us, because we had been very concerned with the little attention given to teachers in the follow-up actions that had been envisaged following this summit. And this panel was launched, and we've been working to influence this panel over the past year, and we're actually, for once, super pleased with the outcome of a global process. So this UN high-level panel launched their recommendations at the end of February. I can share a link in the chat. There's an amazing set of recommendations on how to invest in the teaching profession, how to ensure that teachers have a voice, and really address the global shortage of teachers that the world is faced with at the moment, which in no large part is due to the large number of teachers choosing to leave the profession. So a lot of measures necessary to be put in there. I'm not sure where I am with my 7 minutes, but I think I'm supposed to start wrapping up. So maybe just a few words about how I ended up here. I have a background in the student movement, and as with all students, at some point you can no longer be a student representative, and that meant that I was really looking for work that would allow for me to continue a general world improving effort with education at its very center. I have a master's degree in sociology, a subject that I chose in many ways because I felt that that was something that would support me in my activism. And even if I loved sociology as a discipline, I think I would dare to go as far as to say that for my current job, having a background in a movement, and the student movement specifically as a constituency-based movement, a membership-based organization, that has been incredibly helpful for me in not just doing my work here at Education International, but really understanding and appreciating what it means to be a movement and the kinds of challenges and tensions that you have to navigate when being a movement. Yeah, maybe I leave it here actually, and I'll trust you to ask questions around all the bits I left out.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Antonio. Really cool to hear about how your experience in a movement led you to where you are today. And I know a lot of my classmates on the call today have been former teachers. So it's really encouraging to hear how you're working to help them voice their opinions at a high level and the recent victories you've had gaining influence. Before we move on to the next presentation, I want to remind the audience members to please put your questions in the chat as we go. My colleagues will be monitoring them, and so we'll be happy to share those during the Q&A. Next, I'll invite Motoi to please present, and we will pull up the slides for you, so please just let us know when you're ready to move on. Go ahead, Motoi.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here. And can I move to my slide? So, is it this one? Oh, this one, right.
See it now,
so
Motoi?
Okay. Yeah, I think I can move by myself. Okay,
Yeah.
my name is Motoi Koike.
Motoi, sorry.
Yep.
Don't mean to interrupt here, but you can move your own slides, but not everybody can see you moving your slides. So just give us a heads up on it, because it's one of the weird things on Teams where you can move slides forward without everybody else seeing where you're at. So right now we're at the table of contents. So just let us know if you want us to go forward or.
Okay.
Sorry.
Could you please move forward? Next slide, please.
Okay. Project assigning current position.
Yeah. So you can see the slide, project assign and current position.
Yep.
Slide right now.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Motoi Koike. I'm from Japan International Cooperation Agency, Project for Enhancement of Education Research and University Management Capacity at Vietnam Japan University. It's a very long project name. And JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, is governmental agency of Japan, which is implementing official development assistance. And our project is mainly about this binational university called Vietnam Japan University. And what JICA assigned for me is basically I have three contracts. One is educational program monitoring, one is administrative capacity building, and the another one is strategic planning and coordination. And I can move by this one. Yeah, but these are very broad assignment. So I have to specify within my context in the Vietnam Japan University. So what I'm currently approaching is strengthening quality assurance system and enhancing understanding of quality assurance within the university. and establishing the university staff development program with Japanese partners, and planning the future plan for this to a point to serve this. We have a full output in the project and for the project purpose. Could you please move to the next slide? And probably I will skip next one. And you can see the project or the project output slide. Is there the way I can? Yeah. So sorry. The project started in 2020 and will last to 2025. And we have this for output. And my work specifically related to output 1 and output 4. So capacity, management capacity, and quality of education. And with this for output, we will serve this project purpose. VJU sustainably operate master program and establish foundation of providing high quality education. So this is the basic structure. And I will skip next one because this is long history of our project. We started in 2014 and we started first phase project in 2015 and we are now in the second phase of the project. But this is, I think this is not interesting part. So could you please move to my career journey slide? Can you see the first?
The title slide, and then here's the first one from University Administrator to International Cooperation.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, so I started my career from the University Administrator, but I was intended to be a diplomat, but I failed the exam. And I go to the office called kind of career counseling office, and I took the test and diagnosis that my suitable job is university president. And I began to job hunting to secure a position in university. And eventually the Tokyo College of Music, the old music college in Japan, hired me. And I involved in a wide range of duties like the quality assurance, faculty development, student staff development, policy formulations, and so on. And in 2012, the MOOC began very popular, and I'm really interested in. And in 2013, there's opportunity to have internship in Open University Malaysia, supported by Ministry of Economics, and I just get this opportunity and went to Malaysia. And I learned about the very dynamic higher education landscape in this emerging country. This is my first time to see this kind of different countries' university. So this leads to probably current position. And could you please move to the next slide? Can you see the second slide?
Yeah, I think we're
in 2, the University Administrator to International Cooperation 2, right? And in 2015 to 2016, I convinced my employer in Tokyo College of Music and study abroad in University College of London to study about higher education. And then I also went to Mastery School of Management to learn about university management. And I met the people from the Dean of the African University, the officer in branch campuses. And I gradually get this idea about international higher education. And then afterward, I hired by JICA as associate expert in higher education management and assigned to this Egypt-Japan University of Science and Technology project, and specifically involved in the launching a Faculty of International Business and Humanities. In 2019, I dispatched to Alexandria, Egypt, and as a JICA expert to do the similar project which I assigned now, like Egypt, Japan University of Science Technology Project Phase 3, and involved in the university-wide implementation of liberal arts education and introduction of Japanese-style seminar education in Faculty of International Business and Humanities. So this is the brief picture of how my career progressed. So next slide, please. Can you see the lesson and learn slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when I firstly entered JICA, I thought my experience would not be applicable for the emerging country university because it's so unique. The small music college, it's not like a technology college or the very big university, but I think I can apply these skills learning from the context because every this university project have very unique aspect. So I learn from the music college context. I even learned Western music history or the music theory. So I always trying to learn from that context, and it's very useful in working in the emerging country or the new context environment. And forecasting and backcasting, whenever I'm implementing the project, sometimes we only focusing on the activity which now I'm working on. But that will leads to the loose direction of the project. So I try to do the forecasting. What kind of activities leads to what kind of future direction? And then make some backcasting to current activity or current situation, status. And then go forecasting and backcasting. So I'm doing this. And I think this is very important if you are working in the field. And the third point is the power of shared sense of hope. I think this one is really important if the situation, especially in an educational project, sometimes I feel like a pessimistic, nothing changed. Even JICA headquarters is not supporting me, or the partner university is not very supportive or something like that. But always I'm supported by the counterpart who have this kind of sense of hope. Oh, this could be leads to the future. So we are working on. And despite challenging, this kind of sense of hope foster the collaboration and progress. So I try to, this sense of hope to my counterpart, and this could be overcome the cultural difference or I don't know, the bureaucratic. This is recorded, so I wouldn't say that. But yeah. So sometimes it's very challenging. But this shared sense of hope is very important. So
Wonderful.
sorry about this slide. Slide is not showing which I'm seeing, so I'm not sure. So this is just end of my presentation. So
Thank you. Thank you so much, Koike. Really great to hear and see, some of those skills that have been an important through line and have translated across so many types of experiences. Hoping to hear more about that in the Q&A section. Next up, we have Alexandra. If you could please share a little bit about your career journey and your current role.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Biris. Thank you so much for the kind invitation to join you today and for the introduction. I have to say I'm actually particularly happy to be here today because I realized that not too long ago, I think some 3 years ago, I found myself on the CEID YouTube channel watching exactly one of these career panels. and feeling really rather lucky to have stumbled upon it. I'll be completely honest here. Although at the time I was very passionate about education and development, I had little to no like real insight into what these fields can offer as far as career paths go, just as Will mentioned in the beginning. And hearing directly from those experts who shared their experiences then, it was really quite a lot of comfort and reassurance that, all right, there are quite a few interesting, diverse career paths, and maybe I can even carve out my own. So my hope is that in sharing just briefly about some of my experiences today, I can contribute to just a fraction of the sense of encouragement I felt a few years ago. So a little bit of context about myself and my background. I sometimes introduce myself as a Swedish-speaking Finn from Romania. This is really just a handy and a quick way of saying that I grew up in Romania. I was born in Romania to Romanian parents, and then spent most of my life in the Swedish-speaking community in Finland. And the reason I also wanted to bring it up is this kind of mixed identity is also partly responsible for my lifelong passion and interest in education, and also this sense of responsibility that I have to use the education I've been privileged with to contribute to a society in which, an excellent education is nothing but a given for all, regardless of where one is born or happens to grow up. So I think this is also something that reflects in my rather interdisciplinary academic background as well. Just briefly, I started off with a bachelor's in politics, psychology, law, and economics, and continued with a master's in international development studies, both from the University of Amsterdam. And I'm also looking to finish a master's at the University of Helsinki called Changing Education. And in the past 2 or 3 years, I've been very lucky to also start building or carving out a career path, doing exactly this, what I've been hoping for a long time, so improving education. So to be a bit more specific, for about a year now, I've been working as a policy officer and also part of the junior professional program at the European Commission. And as a junior professional, I'm actually currently doing a six-month rotation at the Directorate General for Structural Reform Support, which is quite a mouthful. So we call it DG Reform for short. And this is a rather small service at the Commission in which we provide expertise and technical support to EU member states that are looking to reform or carry out structural reforms in various areas. So, for example, the team I work in, we coordinate reform projects in the fields of education, health, and labor market and social services. And we do this day to day together, working very closely together with representatives from the member states, often from ministries, but also local government, and also working together with partners such as UNICEF, the OECD, the World Bank, Council of Europe. And we do this to help the member states identify reform needs, design reforms, implement them, sometimes even scale them up, and also evaluate the impacts. And for me, this has been a really great learning experience, and I feel very lucky because it feels very rewarding. First of all, working in an environment that combines many of my interests, but I think more importantly than that, something that has a very concrete impact on the ground. However, at the end of May, so in less than 2 months now, I will be finishing this 6 months rotation, and I will be transferring back to the Director General for Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, or DG EAC, as we call it, where I actually did my traineeship, Blue Book traineeship, about 2 years ago. And it was this traineeship that, became a very kind of immersive experience, I could say, because it allowed me, I think, to get a first-hand experience, a real insight into what the Commission is actually like after having only read textbooks about it. And I think I also got to test the waters a little bit and actually apply the knowledge and the skills that I had gained throughout my studies. And I was primarily focusing on education policy evaluation. Some of you perhaps are familiar with the annual publication of the Commission on Education. It's called the Education and Training Monitor. So I was very lucky to contribute to the publication and the dissemination of the 2022 edition, the theme of which was equity in education. So that was very, a very rewarding experience. And I didn't know this at the time, but it was that, or this traineeship that opened up the possibility of staying at the Commission and continuing working here a little bit more long term. So for any of you who are interested in the EU, regardless of your specialization or interested in kind of international policy making, I really, really recommend the Blue Book traineeship. However, prior to coming to the Commission about 2 years ago, I would want to mention perhaps two key moments for me personally and professionally, one of which, actually both of which really solidified my interest and passion for education and development. So one of them was my work experience at the Finnish embassy in South Africa, and the other was my work experience at the University of Helsinki, specifically at the Finnish University Partnership for International Development. I spent about 6 months in South Africa working on education and science related issues in the greater Southern African region. It was a really wonderful experience, a great opportunity. I learned a lot, both content-wise, but also about working life in general, which included that diplomacy perhaps isn't the right environment for me. And at the university, at the Finnish University Partnership for International Development, I spent about 4 months working in a small but young and super dedicated team to help Finnish universities kind of enhance their activities around global sustainable development, from research collaboration to interdisciplinary studies and have maximized their societal impact. And that was a really great introduction to working life for me. And when I think about it, I feel really, really lucky to have been part of that team and have been considered an equal, a colleague whose opinions and contributions were valued and appreciated. So on that note, just to wrap up, now that I've briefly mentioned some of these kind of key moments, I also want to be very, very honest, very transparent, and say that for me, taking those few steps and beginning this kind of, building upon a career in this field was not easy. I'm not organized enough to have a fancy Excel sheet of all the applications, the job and traineeship applications that I sent. So I cannot tell you the exact number of rejections I received, and perhaps that's for the better, but I can tell you that it was many. I think that it's a difficult transition and from studies to work. And I had wonderful professors who were very encouraging. Sometimes I also heard discouraging comments from some saying, you know, the employment prospects in your field of interest are close to zero and you should consider switching. And looking back, I'm really happy I didn't. I also wish I was more optimistic and less anxious, but I think it's easier said than done when navigating this, this difficult transition. So if I could leave you with just a few reflections of what I think was really useful and what helped me navigating this in addition, of course, to hearing from others and participating in career panels like these. It was really to be open to asking for help, whether it was from friends and family or professors or career guidance counselors. It was super useful always. And I also, I think, made some good use of the opportunities close to me, whether it was volunteering or student politics or part-time work. And I think it was also immensely useful because trying out many different things meant that I learned a lot about what I like and what works for me, but also what doesn't really suit me very well. And finally, I think the best advice that I got in this kind of transition period was to reflect a lot on my personal story. And as a graduate, a young graduate with very little relevant work experience, but a lot of drive and interest to really lead with my personal narrative and my motivation. And that's something that I have found worked really well and still continues to work really well. So thank you. That's it from me, and really looking forward to answering any of your questions during the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. I know I'm not alone when I say how much I appreciate your candor and sharing, that you have been recently where so many of us are right now, and how far you've come since then, and the milestones and road bumps along the way. So thank you for sharing, being so open with us. Our last presenter is Fatine, so we'll hear from her in a moment. Just a quick reminder to those who have joined us, please feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. We will try to get those answered during our Q&A session. I already see some really wonderful questions in there that I'm excited to get to. But first, Fatine.
Thank you very much, Emily. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate in the panel. I'm very happy to be among you today. So just as my colleagues, over the next few minutes, I'll share an overview of my profile and career journey, and also wanted actually to leave you with a few tips that I found helpful as I navigated my career journey. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm currently an economist, young professional at the World Bank, working with the Education Global Practice Middle East and North Africa region. For those of you who might not know, the World Bank Young Professional Program, or YPP, is a competitive program to join the World Bank as a staff member. And it's open to youth below age 32 who have at least a master's degree. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have on the program during the Q&A session. So my background is actually mostly in development economics. I studied economics at Sciences Po in France, and later complemented my training with a master's in public administration and international development, also known as the MPAID, at the Harvard Kennedy School. And this really provided me with great training and exposure to international development and development economics. But it's really through my professional experiences that I tried to learn and open up to the education policy field. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I've been really deeply passionate about education since my undergraduate studies. And I tried through my professional experiences to learn as much and gather the skills that I thought one would need in a policy, in an education policy career. So here I wanted to walk you through briefly the experiences that I found most meaningful throughout my journey. Starting with my first internship at the Results for Development Institute, which was a long while ago. I first joined as an intern, and this was really my first introduction to some of the key areas of education. Think early childhood, education financing. And this is also where I met former contributors to the Global Education Monitoring Report, which is the global report for SDG 4 monitoring. And this is, how I was able to transition later on and work as a research intern first and a research consultant at the GEM report. This was my first experience working at such a global level on a flagship report, and also my introduction to the SDG 4 agenda. So really great learning experience there. I then transitioned to the Jamil Poverty Action Lab, or JPAL, which operates as a much different scale, much more micro-focused. For those of you who might not know, JPAL is a research organization gathering a large network of researchers, mostly in development economics. And this network conducts randomized controlled trials to evaluate the impact of social programs across the world. So again, operating really at the level of the program themselves rather than this massive global SDG 4 agenda. This was also a great learning experience. I had the chance to, work closely with academia, hone my quantitative skills, and really gain exposure to experimental research in development economics and for education, social programs in particular. I wanted to briefly pause here to mention that, so this first experience I had with JPAL was with their research team as a research assistant, but JPAL has also other kind of roles, in particular what they call policy roles. And the policy team at JPAL has somewhat a different function, where their role is really to link the research conducted by the network with policy making. And so your role at the policy team is to help disseminate and make the research more accessible to larger audiences and to policymakers in general. So the research doesn't stay, just with academia, but is actually used by policymakers to whom it's targeted. So I actually also later on came back to JPAL and work as a policy manager, and I'd be happy to answer more questions on that. So after my first experience at JPAL as a research assistant, I then moved to the Directorate for Education and Skills at the OECD, where I worked on the report Education at a Glance. So second experience working on a large flagship report globally, where here, having that first experience with the GEM report helped me tremendously. I was able to reuse some of the knowledge I had gained on the SDG 4 agenda, but also complement it and gain more insights into how do you calculate indicators, make sure they're comparable globally, how large institutions such as OECD and UNESCO collaborate together to ensure data quality, etc. So, when you do your research and go on, I don't know, UNESCO statistics or OECD, and you see all these indicators, it was interesting to see, all the work behind those tables that we see online and I'll refer to from time to time. And then as a graduate student, I also had the opportunity to do an internship at ID Insight, which is a nonprofit consulting firm or NGO that works directly with other NGOs or governments to guide their decision making through quality data. So really supporting them in, say, consulting missions, but more geared towards development. And this I thought was a nice complement to my previous experiences, because it was my first time really working for a partner, for a client, and answering their needs with data, the analysis they needed. So again, different perspective and great learning experience. And this has really helped me transition to the World Bank, which I joined last year, and where I really feel that I'm building both on this analytical work that I had the chance to do over the years, but also more this operational exposure and client-oriented exposure that I had in some of my experiences. So again, very happy to answer further questions, but overall, I mean, the World Bank so far has been a great place to work and learn a lot. Lastly, if we could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So to finish, I wanted to leave you with 5 pieces of advice that I believe were particularly helpful in their career journey, and hopefully you'll see the link with what I just shared with you. But first, I think what helped me, especially not having studied education in my academics, but really through my professional experience, was to explore different subfields or subsectors of education, whether it's early childhood, higher education, teachers, skills, etc. Felt like, every time I was moving from one experience to the other, I could either open up myself to a new field or build on what I had learned before, and that was very helpful. The second tip, and I think that's especially relevant, at least from my experience, especially relevant to the World Bank YPP, is to strive to build what they call a T-shaped profile. So acknowledging, to have that sectoral expertise in education, if this is the type of work you're interested in, but also be aware that we don't operate in silo or in a vacuum, and have that, breadth of knowledge to have that overview of the policy arena. The next tip is, I think what has been most helpful to me is to leverage interviews as networking opportunities. Sometimes, you can be, you think you're doing good in an interview and still it doesn't work out. And because of how just competitive our world has become. But I think what has helped me is to really still try to do my best in interviews and use that to also know people in the field and maybe build a relationship with them through that interview. That has helped me a lot. Fourth is, again, if you're interested in like a more global career, is to invest in your language skills, even later in life. I mean, we all talk about lifelong learning. Really don't be discouraged, and you can always, pick up a new language. We have so many opportunities to invest in our language skills today. And lastly, again, maybe especially relevant to my work at the World Bank, but I thought that really striving to develop a balanced skill set, having both the technical skills, but also the operational skills of program implementation, project management, client-oriented focus, has helped me tremendously. So that was all from me. Thank you once again for having me, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Fatin. So helpful to see some of those concrete steps we can start working on, even now as we're still in our studies. So now we are moving on to our Q&A session. We have about 40 minutes. Please feel free to raise your hand and I'll invite you to unmute, introduce yourself and ask your question, or you can also put a question in the chat. We already have some great questions to start off with. Sebastian has asked what the first step you took upon departing academia and searching for a job in the field. I believe Sebastian shared he also studies sociology. So Antonia, I see you have started to answer that in the chat, but maybe you could expand a little bit upon some of those first steps.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. First, just a word, just hilarious. Hi, Alexandra. Great to see a fellow Swedish-speaking Finn here. Unexpected. So as I said in the chat, Sebastian, it's a great question. And I think there's probably as many answers here as there are people out there. There's lots and lots and lots of pathways and lots of stumbling. That some will be more open with than others. I think I was really lucky, and that's also probably why I emphasized activism in my first reflections, because working with the student movement and I was working with the Union of Secondary Students, actually. So working in the student movement opened a lot of doors, and I then went on to work within the European student movement. Just an exposure to people, organizations that you don't get if you do the traditional pathway of just finishing upper secondary and going on to study immediately. I took quite a few years there in between. My parents were very concerned. I was really excited because I had all these opportunities and I was happily and hungrily just grabbing all of them. And looking back, I'm really happy I did, even if I, of course, also had moments where I was really like, oh my God, will I ever have a proper paid job? And at the end of the day, I did have my first paid job thanks to my activism and thanks to the fact that there were a number of organizations, including a private foundation, that knew my activism and knew my politics and therefore offered me an opportunity. And I think for me, that's really key. I've wanted opportunities where I'm allowed to be political, where I get to work for the values, the politics that I believe in on a daily basis. And that's really been my guiding principle. And I'm absolutely convinced that when I interviewed for my first position at Education International about 10 years ago, it was the fact that I was very explicitly political in my analysis of what the education field looked like, what the teaching profession was experiencing. That was what got me the job. It wasn't a single part of my CV, but it was a very political outlook. And I think sometimes we are led to believe that it's easier to get a job if we don't have opinions and if we are very agreeable and just happy to do anything. I don't think that's necessarily the right way, at least not for everyone. And if you feel like that's not your way, don't try, because it's very exhausting to apply for things trying to be something that you're not. And I really think, and I notice it now when I interview for positions here at EI as well, what I'm looking for is not a clone of like the perfect employee, but I'm looking for something that just gives me a feeling that this is a genuine human being who has some interesting perspectives, who has some interesting experiences to build on, who has things to teach me, who has things to teach EI. So don't hesitate to be yourselves and also show some of your, some of your interests, some of the things you love doing in your spare time and that you might not talk about. I think one of the things that has facilitated relationships for me in the workplace for all my life has been the fact that I'm a real book nerd. And talking about books can be a super powerful way of just connecting with people who initially may not seem so interesting or may not seem so easy to connect with in the first place. So yeah, those are a few reflections for Sebastian.
Thank you so much. I think that search for a balance between values and opportunity is probably a lifelong journey, but really cool to hear how you've prioritized that, and also that can be, a key entryway as something to market about yourself and to take a stance and to stand out. I'm seeing a few questions about other ways to market your experience to build management skills, especially for those who may not have previous work experience. Maybe Alexandra, as someone who's still currently in academia, could you tell us a little bit about some of the skills you've developed in your studies that kind of translate back and forth to work opportunities?
Yeah, I think a really great question. And looking at the question, if it's the answer might be slightly different depending on kind of the focus. So if we're talking about how to kind of get a step in, I think the answer might look very different than how does one's academic background actually contribute day to day in my work, for example. But to kind of split my answer into two to address both, I would say when it comes to getting a foot in, I think like relevant academic background can be very important and can be something that can be leveraged. And here I can be as specific as, or it can be as specific as the research that you did, like the thesis that you did, the topic that you focused on, or the demographic, the sample group that you interviewed, or you know, something like that. Because content knowledge, I think, is important. That's something that you can definitely leverage, I think, in an interview, something also to connect on. And I think a really good basis, when Antonia was saying about opinions, I absolutely agree. In a topic like this, I think if we're talking about education and development, you know, we have opinions. We are political. It is political, and we're working towards, I think, a particular, let's say, general goal, which is improvement, right? So it doesn't make sense to kind of be bland. And I think having content knowledge provides you with a very good foundation for being able to answer questions like, what do you think the teaching profession should look like, or what do you think that would be necessary to invest in order to have a future-proof labor market, or you know, any kind of questions like that might actually pop up that have to do with your opinions. So yeah, that's answering maybe that part of the question. If I then focus a little bit more like the day-to-day work and how I can see my experiences as a student really helping me in the work today, it's not necessarily content knowledge as such, which I think is still important. It's like the kind of metacognitive skills, the learning how to learn skills. I am panicked at work regularly in a good way, because what I mean by that is I receive questions and I receive tasks where I'm like, wow, I have no idea. Like my immediate reaction is I have no clue. I don't even know really where to begin. But that panic with practice kind of fades away quite quickly, because I know that I have some skills and I have some methods and I have some kind of research skills that I can lean on and I can rely on to get to an answer. And this is something that came through my studies and through doing research at university. That definitely come in handy. I think transferable skills like that are incredibly important. Things that you don't know how to do will inevitably come along. I think, as we all hope to have, it would be very boring otherwise. So being able to kind of rely on your own kind of abilities to deal with those unknowns, I think, is very important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Koike, I'm wondering if you can add a little bit to the conversation from your experience in higher education. Maybe, you know, you talked a little bit about the skills you've used to transition through your various positions. What skills do you look for now as a project manager on your team? And I see we just had a question in about transferring experience from experience in Western education back to perhaps Japan or China for some of our international students. Do you have any advice there?
Thank you so much. I think I can answer to this question about Tian, from Tian. Yeah, this is why I emphasize the importance of context. In this kind of developing country, emerging country, the influence from the Western or the foreign countries' education system is very obvious. But what I try to work for is which solutions, and because our project is coming from Japan, so we tend to introduce Japanese system. However, this is not right answer for them. So I try to learn from context and which probably the approach would be suitable for this context or this situation. So I'm not just taking from the Japanese system or the Chinese system or UK system. So we have to create the approaches which is suitable for that specific context or the specific time period. So this is how I approaching to the project. I'm not sure this answer to your question. So that's why really the context is important. So this is kind of an answer I gave to you.
Wonderful. Very, very helpful to hear. Fatin, I think we have a question about some of the day-to-day work at the World Bank. You've already shared a little bit with us about how to build your profile, but what does it look like once you're there?
Thank you very much, Emily, for sharing, for your question, sorry. So I think so far, so I joined the World Bank a few months ago. So far, I've joined the Middle East and North Africa region, so working with countries from the region. And the World Bank really work with client countries. So we have, that constant exposure with them. Day to day, sometimes maybe you would do analyses that would be helpful for a client in part of like technical assistance project, where they want to understand a challenge they're facing in their policies or some questions they want to dig deeper. So we would help them with that. Sometimes it's also really about lending operations. So again, the World Bank is a bank lending to countries to improve their policies. So here again, sometimes there is analysis feeding into these projects. So day to day, my role is really looking through the data, writing some analyses that could be helpful for countries. I think something that I also wanted to stress is that the World Bank really insists tremendously on teamwork. So a lot of our work day to day is really done as part of a team. And the great thing about the World Bank is that team are very diverse, not only in terms of course, like citizenship or like origin or background of different origins, but also in terms of the fields that people are coming from, in terms of their age, their number of years of experience. So we also really work in teams to run these programs. Hopefully I'm answering your question.
Definitely. That's awesome. I'm also seeing a kind of more technical question about starting to work for these international organizations and technicalities about right to work and immigration. If any of you have experience with that, maybe, I'm not sure if some of the young professional programs help with that. Alexandra or Fatin, are you able to illuminate anything on that side?
Sure, I'm happy to give it a try, but also, I think it's also a question that can be helpful to raise directly with some HR recruiters in these organizations. Sometimes we can find them on LinkedIn. But as far as international organizations in the US, I know that there is a special visa for people who work in these international organizations like the UN or the World Bank. So usually, if you get a job, they will support you into having into getting that visa. And it's a G4 visa, if you're wondering.
I don't have much to add to this, unfortunately, but what I could perhaps reflect on is eligibility for the European Commission. The European Commission has several eligibility criteria for everyone who works here, regardless of type of contract, which includes more or less EU citizenship, with some exceptions. And I want to mention this one exception that I'm aware of. Although, like Fatin, I would really encourage anyone who's interested in this particular issue to really carefully study online the eligibility criteria. Everything should be available, publicly available. But one exception to this EU citizenship eligibility criteria is the Blue Book traineeship. So even though the vast majority of people who get through the selection process for the traineeship are EU citizens, there is a quota for non-EU citizens. And although I believe that is the most competitive one, because you are indeed competing with the rest of the world, whereas other trainees are selected on the basis of their nationality. Many people do make it, and I think provide a lot of diversity and richness to the work of the Commission, and different perspectives that are very valued. So this is something that I think is worth mentioning. But other than that, there are many other international organizations that I think recruit on a much wider geographical basis than the European Commission. And just one final thing to add, Fatin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but so the Young Professionals program for the World Bank seems to be open externally. That is not the case with the Junior Professionals program in the Commission. I should have mentioned that during my introduction. So that program is open only if you are already inside of the Commission, unfortunately, which means either a trainee or a contract agent or otherwise employed by the Commission. There is no vacancy open externally. So yeah, very limiting from that point of view also.
Understood. Helpful to have those tips. I'm seeing a great question from Amanda, who's curious about changes in the sector in general and how you've seen it change over your careers and maybe where you think it's moving. What are the key issue areas perhaps in the next 5 years that, maybe it'd be helpful for us to develop expertise on as we're entering the field. Antonia, could we start with you?
Oof, that's a massive question. So biased as I am, I would start with a reflection around teachers really being something that wasn't talked about very much when I started my job here at Education International about 10 years ago. And I think we've seen a really interesting increase in interest and political priority assigned to teachers, having sufficient numbers of teachers, looking at training qualifications, and even looking at issues around pay and working conditions, rights to social dialogue, collective bargaining, things that really were not talked about in these global policy processes about education more broadly, and something that we are obviously really, really excited about. I think generally there's SDG 4, the adoption of SDG 4 in 2015 obviously brought in a new framing and a new set of priority issues that then became also the kind of structure for many of the policy processes in the education sector. And I think what we've seen since its adoption is a very, very strong adoption of the SDG 4 discourse. We haven't necessarily seen so much implementation, but the discourse is really everywhere. So I'd say that knowing the basics around SDG 4 is important if looking for an education development kind of intersection job. And then I think there's a big piece around both climate and artificial intelligence as areas that have only grown and will only grow in the next couple of years. Understanding to what extent, and there's a kind of policy piece around understanding the extent to which education systems need to be able and equipped to teach about the climate crisis, its causes, its consequences. But there's also a piece around kind of resilience and education institutions that can somehow function as the crisis is only deepening. And I think we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we've seen South Sudan close all schools because of extreme heat. And then 2 weeks later, it was the Philippines closing thousands of schools because it's simply not possible to have teachers and students in classrooms when it's 45 degrees. There's simply no preparedness for that. So a big piece around climate and a couple of components of the climate piece more broadly. And then artificial intelligence, massive piece around what and how do students learn about artificial intelligence? What kind of competencies do teachers need to have? What kind of regulation is put in place? At what level? Is that government? Is it EU level? What's happening at school level? A real kind of urgency around working out some of these issues to really ensure that AI is introduced safely and ethically and in line with the broader pedagogical project, if introduced at all.
Thank you for tackling such a big question with so much insight. Motoi, I know you kind of briefed over a timeline of how your program has progressed in the years. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on where you see it moving forward within the higher education space.
I mean, about my career transition things.
About trends in higher education more broadly.
Trends in the higher education. Probably in my project, like in Japan, around 2000, we have this project with the name of Japan in university name. For instance, in 2010, JICA started Egypt-Japan University of Science and Technology project. And 2015, we started Vietnam-Japan University. So this kind of binational university project launched. And this trend showing that this international cooperation thing becomes a bit national interest oriented in a way. I have to be careful about the recording, but I believe that is true. And it's good. There's a good aspect in that trend. And because if we put this name of Japan, many Japanese partners assumingly support our project. So this is a good side. However, the different side aspect is difficult part is that it's international cooperation is not just about a national interest. So we have to think about more like both sides benefit and regulate the both side benefits. So if Japanese interest is too strong, it's not work very well, I believe. So this is one trend in Japan. I hope this could be answer your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing. We're coming to a close on our time, so a couple final questions. Stephanie has shared that she is a teacher of 30 years, now transitioning into the development space, and curious how that transition might be different than younger applicants. Antonia, as an expert on teachers' contributions to global policy, could you maybe provide some insight into, maybe the special role that former teachers can play?
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing seeing Stephanie's question because you'd be so incredibly welcome and appreciated here, where really applicants who have teaching experience are always treated as kind of extremely promising candidates. And I think there was a question actually earlier in the chat as well about kind of recruitment processes, and I think for us, having or applicants with teaching experience and or a background working in a trade union at national level are obviously kind of experiential pieces that we treat as incredibly important and super desired. We also make an effort to shortlist candidates from across the globe, and an effort to really look at experiences beyond a formal degree. So in many ways, saying more interested sounds dramatic, but very interested in the work experience, including volunteering experience. And I think that's an important one for those of you who are worried about not having very much experience. Volunteering is the perfect place to exercise all of these transferable skills, learning how to lead teams, processes, learning how to deal with people, learning how to deal with difficult people, all of it. I think that's a super, super important piece. And then if this is our kind of last wrapping up round as well, Emily, then maybe just a last reflection that I think I'm someone who right now has what I would probably describe as a dream job. And yet, when studying, I had no idea that this job even existed. And I think that's really important to remember, that there are so many opportunities out there and the pathways are so many. All the stumbling is as important as all those achievements that you're proudly then putting down on your CVs, because that's really where we figure out who we are and how we deal with things, and where we work out how to deal with things moving forward as well. So in that sense, keep going and grab those opportunities, because the worst thing is that you decide, oh, wasn't great, and you move on to something else, and you'll look back and it might actually turn out to be great, because through that you met someone or you learned something that then opened up other doors.
What a beautiful transition into final reflections. I'll ask the rest of you to share very briefly, maybe in just one sentence, thinking back to your time of, when you were entering the field where we are now, what you would tell yourself, knowing what you know now. So I'll just go around to the remaining 15. Why don't you kick us off?
Thanks, Emily. Just trying to think briefly of what I would tell myself. Maybe keep an open mind and take what's to learn in each of the opportunities you're given, whether it's an internship, a volunteering experience, an interview, a coursework. There is a lot to learn from each and to leverage later on in your journey.
Thank you. Motoi, final thoughts?
Thank you. I would say, don't worry about your future career to myself. Actually, yeah, because I transit like a very small music college to very national-wide project. So I was really, oh, I cannot do this. That's my feeling when I enter to JICA, but I can still survive. So don't worry. You can do that. Yeah.
Very
That's my
relatable
final
feelings.
thought. Yeah.
And Alexandra, final words of advice.
Oof. I subscribe to everything that has been said so far. And I think one thing that I also want to piggyback on what Antonia said about like not knowing even what jobs exist. I think also because of the world of work is changing, there will be jobs that we cannot even imagine right now. And I think I would say my advice would be to not underestimate the importance of sitting down with oneself and reflecting. And that includes not only reflecting on how to say leverage, your experiences so far, or how to kind of profile yourself or market your skills, but also maybe a deeper reflection about what do you want and what works for you, what values you are looking to kind of align with, because I think in this transition, it's easy to feel like whatever comes along, you have to kind of grab onto. And I think where it comes less naturally to ask ourselves the question in the beginning of the career of, does this work for me? Does this align with what I think would be good for me and what would be interesting for me? It's okay to also be a bit picky, I think. So yeah, I will leave you with that.
So important to remember that there are two sides of a good match. And you both mentioned not knowing what's out there, but I think everyone here today has learned so much more about what is out there from all the experience you've shared with us today. So thank you all very much for your time and your openness and sharing thoughtful responses. I know there are some questions in the chat that we didn't have time for, but we will be hosting another panel soon, and I'll turn it back over to Will to tell us more about that.
Okay. Thanks everybody for your sharing today. I think it was excellent, and a big thank you to Emily for moderating. I wanted to give a couple of other highlights for those that are still working. There's a lot of events out there for you to learn more about the field. So I'll ask one of the event planning team members to share the link to this event in the chat for those that are local, but there's also spots to join this event online. So this is UK's Education and Development Forum, who on April 26 are having their own early career event. This is designed more for early career researchers. But if you're interested, please do join. So Koike Kabaka, the head of international education and development at the UK-based National Foundation for Education Research, will be the keynote, and Akfet's providing UK-based travel bursaries for master's and PhD students. So if you're UK-based and want to go, you can register at the link that I think will appear in the chat shortly. As Emily mentioned, we do have a week from today, our second education and career panel. So exciting group of panelists joining us from Room to Read, UNESCO's Global Education Monitoring Report, Plan International, Save the Children, and ActionAid. Unfortunately, our colleague from the Association for the Development of Education in Africa has had it withdrawn, but I think it will be another great round of conversations. So if you haven't registered, there's still space. So we'll pop that into the chat as well. Please do register to join next week's conversation. That will take place a little bit later in the day, from 2 to 3:30 British Standard Time. So as we wrap up here, amazingly on time, I think that's a big thank you to Emily for hosting and moderating and being able to get us here on time. So thank you so much, Emily. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining today, for sharing. I know I've learned a lot from it all, as far as thinking about what are some of the key topics, the fact that there's potentially new job opportunities and placements that we don't even know about yet, that we can't think through. Important how we use those transferable skills, going from sector to sector or going across different organizations, as well as a little bit of resiliency. So how do you get through the challenging times, and recognizing that, you know, it may be difficult, but I like especially this idea of kind of having an attitude of hope into the future. So a big thank you from everybody on our end. I want to, again, appreciate everybody's contributions today. And if you want to learn more about us in comparative education and international development at Moray House, the University of Edinburgh, please do follow us on X/Twitter, or you can see more about our research program or our master's program. So thanks, everyone. We're going to stop the recording now, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Have a nice
much.
rest of the day.
Thank you so
Thank you so much. Thank you.